Well,
I did want to comment on one thing that you were talking about, and that is the resonance that you felt with inside with fantasy, with the visual imagery. And I do want to say that that resonance goes even deeper, because the biggest difference between fantasy and science fiction, in my opinion, has nothing to do with the furniture, with the science per se. After all, Anne McCaffrey's novels were, dragons set in a medieval setting, and she had whole long sequences with bards and all of that. I mean, who did dragons better than Anne McCaffrey? And yet, when anybody called her a fantasy writer, she would be enraged. She would angrily say, "I am a science fiction author." First off, the dragons had once been genetically engineered to do their job, but that's beside the point. The main point is that her people in her series of novels discover that they had once been interstellar colonists with starships and flush toilets and universities and women's rights. And when they discover this, they want all those things back. And it's that wanting of change that is the heresy that science fiction commits against the mother genre, which is fantasy. Because if you read the Iliad and the Odyssey, Gilgamesh, they're all in hierarchical societies in which the element of wonder is performed by a few demigods at the top. And spirit carriers get at best to choose, as happens in that high-tech fantasy called Star Wars. The most a normal person can do is choose which side of demigods that you're willing to die for. So look, I've written fantasy. I have a screenplay out there for the Loom of Thessaly, in which the hero meets the fates. But the mother genre does have a tense relationship with its offspring, science fiction.
David,
Because science fiction is about the probability of change.
That's a really interesting comparison. I've heard many different ways of splitting out fantasy and science fiction and categorizing them, hard or soft science fiction, where they're set, urban, high Middle Earth type settings. But it's a great point that often the change that a whole fantasy arc will make by the end is a relatively, a single change to a hierarchy that largely still exists.